Welcome to a Telltale Books video. I'm Greg, and I'm continuing my Theodore Sturgeon series with this video, covering the next of the McClure newspaper syndicate stories that he wrote before he started writing any science fiction. This story is the 12th of these stories that I'm covering, and the 12th in my Theodore Sturgeon bibliography. And it is titled East is East. It was published by McClure on June 24th, 1939. And we're closing in on the end. I think I've got maybe 4 more of these to do, and then I get to Ether Breather. So this was an interesting period of Sturgeon's career at the very beginning, cutting his teeth on these stories that were not science fiction, so they're not what he's best known for, but and they're all really, really short. East is East is short enough that I consider it to be flash fiction, what we today would call flash fiction. Back then they would have called it a short story. It's only like 2.5 pages long in the book where I have it, The Ultimate Egoist, which is Volume 1 of the complete stories of Theodore Sturgeon. A very good series. I've got the entire series. I bought these as they came out new, and I've hung on to them because I love Theodore Sturgeon's work, and this is just such a valuable part of my library. I can't tell you how much I really love having these books. I'm glad these were published by North Atlantic Books, and I'm very glad they did them. I wish a lot of other science fiction authors would have something like that put together, covering their whole career. Sadly, a lot of them don't. But a series like this, I think, goes a long way to showing everybody just how versatile of a writer Sturgeon was, and how excellent all of his stories were, even the stuff he's not so well known for. Which is kind of part of my point of going through and trying to read everything I can get my hands on, is because I want to read all that stuff that's not science fiction, all that other stuff that these writers thought were worth writing. And so I think it's worth reading, especially something as short as East is East. I think I read it in less than 5 minutes. So what is East is East about? You have Laura, young woman. She comes from an upper class family, but she wants to rebel against her upbringing, and she wants to experience life and have an adventure, some excitement. So she goes to the east end of town, which is it's the waterfront, the less respectable part of town. Let's put it that way. It's the area where her family wouldn't be caught dead. And she goes to this club called the Jitter Club. And she meets a young man. Young man is named Sam, nicknamed Sookie Reynolds. And she is taken with him, and they talk and they dance and they have a good time, have some drinks together at the Jitterbug. And then he reveals to her that he lives next door to her in the rich west end of town, and he was getting out to have some adventure too. There's nothing really in the story notes in the back of the book, which I recently discovered. This is only a second story where I've since I found out those were back there, that I went and looked, and there really isn't anything back there except that it was published in the McClure newspaper syndicate on June 24th, 1939. So not much information about the story on record. But it's a fun and well-written story with a humorous twist, and kind of make you a point about society, at least the way it was in 1939. Maybe it's still like that for people with that kind of money. I don't know. I'm not one of them. So it was an enjoyable story and worth looking up. Definitely worth finding this book. I believe you can still get this as an ebook. Somebody commented on my last video from this book that this whole series is still available as ebooks, so you can still get it and read it, even if you can't get the actual nice hardcover like I have. The series is still being made available, so I would go on Kindle or Apple Books and look that up and get it. It's all the McClure stories, but it also does get into, at some point, his early science fiction stories. In this book is Ether Breather, his first science fiction publication. Also has Bianca's Hands, which is a well-known Theodore Sturgeon story. It is in here, and the sequel to Ether Breather, Butyl in the Breather. Some excellent stories in here. Very well worth checking that out. Well worth the cost of whatever it costs for the ebook. I would get it, and I would get the rest of the series too, and just read Sturgeon's work. He's one of science fiction's great treasures, and of course, he only wrote a couple, 2 or 3 or maybe 4 novels. Most of his work is short stories and that, and he's been dead since the 1990s, 1980s. So he's a perfect candidate for everybody to forget about, because he's not alive and his stuff is old and it's not very many novels. So why read him? Because his work is just so good and fun and interesting and fascinating, and he is such an excellent writer. One of the very, early science fiction doesn't have a lot of real writers in it. It's mostly these teenagers that were science fiction fans, and so they wanted to write science fiction, but they went to school for science and engineering, and they wrote in their spare time, and they never really became writers of the highest caliber. They became competent writers, but their stories were interesting, and they wrote some classics of science fiction, but they never had the kind of compelling wordsmithing that authors like Theodore Sturgeon were capable of. And so they fall short of really being excellent writers. And that's why I think Sturgeon especially should be remembered and should continue to be read. No matter what you think of short stories, get over yourself, read short stories. They're great. Sturgeon was one of the great short story writers. He did write some novels, so you can read those too. So get out there and enjoy Sturgeon. Discover him and treasure him the way that I have for most of my life. Off my soapbox, on to the next Theodore Sturgeon story, which I didn't write down what that would be, but number 13. I forget the title. Another one of the McClure newspaper syndicate stories. I hope you'll come back and join me for that. Leave your comments if you've read East is East. Leave your comments in the comment section of the video for all of us to appreciate. And come on back. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so you can keep finding us. And I hope you'll see me in the next video.